Have you ever been so blindsided, so completely betrayed, that your world cracked in half like glass under a hammer? Because that's exactly what happened to me when I discovered my husband, the man I'd spent 10 years loving, trusting, and building a life with, left me for someone else, but not just anyone. He left me for my stepmother. Yes, you heard that right. My stepmother. The woman who raised me after my mother passed. The woman I once called Mom. I'm 33 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a pretty normal life. I lived in Ohio, married to a man named Derek. Charming, attentive, the kind of guy who brought me coffee in bed and remembered every little thing about me. We met in college, fell hard, married, young. We'd been through thick and thin, miscarriage, layoffs, family drama. I thought that kind of shared history meant something. After my mom died in a car accident when I was 17, my dad remarried quickly, too quickly in hindsight. He met Claire, a vibrant blonde with a dazzling smile, 20 years younger than him. She was only 12 years older than me. At the time, I resented her. Who wouldn't? But over time, I softened. She was always nice. Maybe too nice. She tried to befriend me, offered to do my hair before prom, called me sweetheart. I didn't love her, but I tolerated her. Claire had always been, well, flirtatious. Not just with my dad, but with everyone. It made me uncomfortable sometimes, but I chalked it up to her being extroverted, overly affectionate. I never, in a million years, thought she'd go near Derek. The first time I sensed something was off was subtle. We were hosting a small barbecue, just family. Claire laughed a little too hard at one of Derek's jokes. Her hand lingered on his arm a second too long when she passed him a beer. It was like watching a spider inch toward a fly in slow motion. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was paranoid, but things kept happening. Derek started spending more time at my dad's house, offering to help with yard work. He'd come home smelling like Claire's perfume, one I knew too well because she gifted it to me once, saying, "It's what I wore when your dad fell for me." Gross. I remember sniffing his shirt one night and feeling a chill go down my spine. When I asked Derek if he was cheating on me, he laughed. "With your stepmom? You've been watching too many soap operas." He kissed my forehead and told me to relax, but I couldn't. Something wasn't right. Then came the day I found Claire's lipstick, bright coral, like melted sunset, on a wine glass in our kitchen. She hadn't visited in weeks. When I asked Derek about it, he said he didn't know. Maybe it's yours? But I don't wear lipstick, never have. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest tight like a vice. My mind raced, questions clawing at me, and something in my gut whispered what I didn't want to hear. They were hiding something. Together. So I did what I promised myself I'd never do. I checked our home security camera, the one Derek insisted on installing in the living room for safety. I accessed the cloud footage, scrolled back, paused, rewound, and there it was. Claire, in my house, on a day I was working late, wearing my robe, pouring herself wine, and Derek, walking in behind her, kissing her, not on the cheek, on the lips, and I felt something inside me die. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, not right away. I sat there frozen, watching them laugh like everything was perfectly normal, like I didn't exist, like our marriage, our vows, our 10 years together were just a subplot in their twisted love story. I must have replayed that clip 100 times that night. Every touch, every look, every casual smirk felt like a dagger in my chest. And yet, when Derek walked through the door later that evening, I smiled. I smiled. I handed him dinner. I asked about his day, and the whole time my heart was pounding like a war drum in my chest. But I needed time. I needed to think. Rage is messy, But revenge? Revenge requires precision. Over the next few days, I became an actress. Oscar-worthy, really. Sweet wife, doting daughter. I even replied to Claire's texts with heart emojis. Inside, I was rotting. But on the outside, perfect. I started noticing all the little details I'd ignored before, like how Derek was suddenly so generous, buying gifts, planning spontaneous getaways, trying to overcompensate probably, or maybe he was just trying to clean his conscience before leaving me. Claire, meanwhile, became bolder. She'd randomly show up at our place, saying she was dropping something off for Dad. She'd wear that same perfume, the same smile. And when Derek was in the room, she radiated this disgusting smugness, like she owned something that used to be mine. I began to recall every weird moment with new clarity, like the time Derek claimed he was working late, but came home with sand in his shoes. Sand. We live in freaking Ohio, not a beach in sight. Or how Claire once slipped and said something about a trip to the lake that I had never heard of, only to immediately backtrack. They weren't even good liars, just confident ones. That's the worst kind. There was one night, just days after I'd seen the footage, where Derek crawled into bed beside me, wrapped his arms around me, and whispered, "I love you, you know that?" I almost laughed. Instead, I whispered back, "I know." But I didn't know anything anymore. I started second-guessing everything. Was I not enough? Did I drive him away? Was I so easy to lie to because I was too trusting, too soft? Part of me wanted to confront him, to scream, throw things, demand answers. But another part wanted to watch, to wait, to see how far they'd go. I started digging, quietly. Claire had a habit of leaving her phone unlocked when she was around. So one day, while she was in the bathroom, I picked it up, and I saw them. The photos, the texts, the hotel receipts, the one that really got me. A selfie of the two of them in a hotel bathroom. Derek shirtless, Claire wearing one of my scarves, captioned, "Can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore." My hands shook. My throat burned. But I put the phone back, exactly where I found it. And I smiled when she came out. Because now I had proof. Now I had control. Once you hold the truth in your hands, undeniable, filthy, soul-shattering truth, something inside you shifts. It's not just pain anymore. It's power. And I wasn't going to waste it. I started by learning everything I could about their little affair. I wasn't just angry. I was meticulous. I went through old credit card statements, tracked phone records, and even checked Derek's calendar for suspicious gaps. And Claire? She had a tendency to talk too much after a few glasses of wine. I played nice, invited her over, smiled, pretended to be clueless. One night, as she babbled on about how exhausting it was to be in love with someone she couldn't publicly claim, I bit into my wine glass so hard I tasted blood. She didn't even notice. But I noticed something huge. They were planning a trip, not just any trip, a honeymoon. Claire called it a celebration of our fresh start. That's when it hit me. Derek was going to leave me. Probably soon. Maybe after the divorce papers were drawn up. Maybe he'd lie and say he needed space or some other half-assed excuse. And they were planning to sail off into the sunset while I sat home with my broken vows. Not a chance. So I did what any woman on the edge would do. I started planning my own trip. A trip that would begin the moment they stepped foot on theirs. Step 1. I needed access. Fortunately, Derek was sloppy with his passwords, and even sloppier when it came to logging out. I got into his email, his travel itinerary, their Airbnb reservation in the Florida Keys, ocean view, Private beach, outdoor shower, romantic, right? Well, not for long. I created a fake profile, booked the Airbnb under a different name for the same dates. Then I reported his booking for fraudulent use, claiming the credit card was stolen. Within 24 hours, their reservation was canceled. Step 2. I called the hotel where they had backup plans, posed as Claire, told them I had to postpone due to a family emergency and that my partner had tested positive for a contagious illness. The tone in their voice changed instantly. "We'll process a refund," they said. "Feel better." Now, no flights, no hotel, no celebration. But I wasn't done, not even close. I called Derek's boss, using a disguised voice, and said I was a private investigator looking into possible corporate misconduct. I dropped a few keywords like embezzlement and harassment, just enough to cause panic and get him flagged. He got pulled into HR the next day. I watched him come home that evening, pale and shaken. He didn't tell me a thing. He just said, "Rough day." I nodded, handed him his drink, and whispered, "You deserve better." He had no idea, no clue that the woman lying next to him each night knew everything. That I was peeling away his life piece by piece while he smiled in my face. But it was Claire who broke first. She showed up at my house, hair a mess, lips trembling. "I think someone's sabotaging us," she said. I almost burst out laughing. Instead, I gasped. "What? That's awful. Who would do such a thing?" She stared at me, eyes narrowed, but she didn't say it. She didn't dare. Because in her heart, she knew. And that fear was just the beginning. It was almost poetic, watching them unravel. Claire, who used to glide through life with smug confidence, now twitched at every noise. Derek, once smooth and in control, became a shadow of himself. Every conversation he had was laced with tension. He was quieter, jumpy, distracted. And I'd never felt more alive, but I wasn't done. Not until they tasted what it felt like to be humiliated, blindsided, and broken, just like I had been. The morning after Claire's visit, I received a text from Derek. "Can we talk tonight? I need to tell you something." I already knew what it would be. He was going to confess, maybe not the whole truth, but some cleaned up version. Probably say he'd developed feelings for someone else. Spin it into some nauseating story about falling out of love. I prepared myself. I cleaned the house, cooked his favorite meal, wore the dress he always loved, the deep red one. When he walked in that night, he looked like he'd aged 5 years in a day. We ate in near silence. Then he put down his fork, looked up, and said, "Claire and we've been seeing each other." I tilted my head. "Since when?" He flinched, surprised I didn't scream. "About 6 months?" Liar. Try 12. He started rambling about guilt, confusion, how he never meant to hurt me, and then, the kicker. "We're thinking of getting married." My fork hit the plate. I smiled. "Wow, that's fast. Does Dad know?" His face turned white. He hadn't thought that far. Or maybe he had, and just hoped I'd take the news quietly. But then came the moment I'd been waiting for. I pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. Inside? Copies of the hotel receipts, emails, even that damn selfie. He didn't touch it. He didn't have to. His hands trembled. "I know everything," I said, calm, ice cold. "I've known for weeks." He opened his mouth, closed it again. He looked like a man choking on secrets too heavy to carry anymore. "You're not even sorry," I whispered. "You're just scared you got caught." Claire called the next day, sobbing. Apparently Derek hadn't told her I knew. She was terrified I'd tell my dad, that the truth would blow up our already fractured family. So I made her an offer. I told her I wouldn't say a word to my father, but in exchange, I wanted something, I wanted to be the one to plan their wedding. Yes, you heard that right. Claire was silent for a long time, then she laughed, nervous, confused. You're joking, right? But I wasn't. I insisted. I told her I wanted to prove I was at peace, that I wished them happiness. What I didn't tell her was that I had no intention of letting that wedding happen without a spectacle they'd never forget. They agreed, hesitantly. And just like that, I had everything I needed: a stage, a date, and an audience. From that moment on, every smile I gave was laced with venom. I threw myself into planning their wedding with the enthusiasm of a proud bridesmaid, but inside, I was calculating. Every flower arrangement, every seating chart, every fake compliment was a thread in the web I was spinning. Claire, true to form, wanted something simple but elegant. Garden ceremony, white roses, her dress, ivory, of course. She actually said, I don't want to wear white. It's not my first wedding after all. I almost choked. The audacity. But I smiled. I smiled through every fitting, every cake tasting, every time she asked my opinion on whether Derek would cry when he sees me. Spoiler alert, he wouldn't. But I might. Tears of laughter. Meanwhile, Derek avoided me. He barely spoke at all during the preparations. I caught him staring at me once, across the room during a floral appointment. He looked ashamed, or maybe just scared. He should be. Because here's the thing. I wasn't just planning a wedding. I was crafting a finale. And the guest list? Oh, I made sure it included every family member, friend, ex-colleague, and neighbor who ever knew either of them. I invited my dad, too. Yes, the same man who married Claire after my mother died. I didn't tell him the real reason. Just said, she wants you there for emotional closure. He agreed. Said he was happy Claire had found happiness again. That man has the emotional awareness of a rock. Then came the final piece, the video. You see, while Derek and Claire were busy playing house, I had downloaded every message, photo, and time-stamped screenshot from their affair. I compiled it all into a tidy little reel, set it to classical music, Vivaldi's Winter, just for the dramatic flair. It was tastefully edited. Nothing too graphic, but the emotional impact? Devastating. And I scheduled it to play during the reception, right after the first dance. I didn't want to cause a scene during the vows. That would be too cliché. No, I wanted everyone lulled into a false sense of beauty first. The fairy tale, the candlelight, the slow dance, and then the truth. But as the big day approached, something strange happened. I started feeling hollow. Not regret, never that, but something colder. Like I'd built my entire world around pain. And now that the climax was near, what would be left? What would I become when the fire I'd tended for so long finally burned out? Still, I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not after what they did. Not after the way they betrayed me and walked around like they were the victims. The night before the wedding, Claire texted me, "Thank you again for everything. I know this must be hard. You're stronger than I ever was." I stared at that message for a long time, and then I smiled, because she had no idea just how strong I really was. The day of the wedding dawned bright, obnoxiously cheerful, the kind of sunshine that makes you question if the universe is mocking you. I arrived early, clipboard in hand, hair perfectly done, not a single crack in my smile. Everyone kept telling me how incredible I was for being so mature, for putting the past behind me. If only they knew. Claire floated around the venue like a pageant queen, giddy and glowing. She kept touching Derek's arm, whispering things in his ear. He looked tight, tense. I'd never seen a groom look less excited to get married. The ceremony was picturesque. Rows of white chairs lined a blooming garden. Live string quartet. Doves. Yes, doves were to be released after the kiss. Claire insisted. She wanted symbolism. I wanted poetic irony. And as she walked down the aisle in her not-so-white dress, I watched my father stand and beam with pride. My father, who still believed Claire was just a good woman with bad luck. If only he knew she was marrying his daughter's husband. When they said their vows, I nearly choked on the hypocrisy. Derek promised to be faithful this time. Claire whispered, "I'll never betray your trust again." I wanted to scream. Since when did you start caring about trust? But I stayed silent. My time was coming. The reception was dreamy. Twinkling lights, soft music, champagne flutes filled and emptied in celebration. I stood near the DJ, pretending to coordinate the evening while keeping one eye on the schedule. Then the moment came. First dance, complete. Toasts, complete. Lights dimmed. Projector hummed to life. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced, "we have a special surprise. A tribute video prepared by the maid of honor herself." Polite applause. And then silence. The screen lit up. It began innocently. Childhood photos of Claire and Derek, photoshopped together for effect. Laughter. Awes. Soft background piano. Then came the texts. "I can't stop thinking about you in that robe. I wish I was in your bed instead." Selfies, hotel receipts, calendar screenshots. The music changed, from piano to something colder. Vivaldi's Winter, fast, jarring strings. On screen, timestamps, phone call logs. Then the selfie, the one in the bathroom, my scarf around her neck. Derek shirtless, gasps. A glass shattered somewhere in the crowd. Claire screamed, literally screamed. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked. Derek turned to me, pale as a ghost. "You—" I held his gaze unwavering. "I told you," I said softly. "I knew everything." My dad stood up looking lost, like he'd just walked into a room mid-explosion. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" Claire ran out of the reception hall in tears. Derek followed, stumbling over chairs and flower arrangements. The guests didn't know what to do. Some followed, some stayed. A few even clapped. And I just stood there, watching the ashes fall. Because that was the thing no one tells you about revenge. It doesn't bring peace, but it brings silence. And sometimes silence is enough. After the video, after the screaming, after the chaos, there was just air, thick, tense air. People whispered. Some avoided me altogether. Others stared at me like I was both a hero and a villain in the same breath. I didn't care, not really. Because for the first time in months, I felt empty. Not broken, not angry, just empty. A week passed before I heard from Derek. He called, left a voicemail. "We need to talk, please. You owe me that much." I owed him nothing, but I met him anyway. We sat in a quiet cafe, far from town. He looked awful, eyes sunken, shirt wrinkled, like a man unraveling from the inside out. He didn't start with an apology. Of course not. He started with why, and I almost laughed. "Why?" I repeated. "Why did I expose you, or why did I wait?" He didn't answer, just looked down, shame thick in the air between us. Then he said something that nearly threw me. I wasn't going to marry her. I blinked. "Excuse me?" I panicked. Everything moved so fast. Claire. She pushed for the wedding. I thought, if I just went through with it, maybe I could fix things. Maybe it would feel right. I stared at him, stunned. Not because I believed him, but because for once, he wasn't lying to me. He looked small, deflated, like a kid caught stealing candy and realizing the candy wasn't worth it. And then came the truth I didn't expect. I never stopped loving you. It hit me like a slap, but not the kind that stings, the kind that confuses you, the kind that makes you question your own reality. Then why did you do it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He sighed. Because she made me feel powerful, like I was someone. You saw through me. You challenged me. With her, I could pretend I was better than I was. I shook my head slowly. You destroyed everything for an ego boost? He didn't deny it, and that was the worst part. I stood to leave, my hands trembling. He grabbed my wrist gently. Is there any part of you that still loves me? I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, I saw him clearly. Not as the man I married, not as the boy I fell for in college, but as someone weak, someone lost, someone I no longer recognized. No, I said, and I don't think you've ever truly loved anyone but yourself. His hand dropped. That was the real ending. Not the wedding, not the video, but this moment where I walked away, not out of rage, but clarity. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Because sometimes the most powerful goodbye is the one you don't scream. It's the one where you leave, quietly, knowing you've outgrown the storm. I thought walking away would feel like the end of a movie, like that final scene where the hero steps into the sunset and soft music plays, signaling that everything painful is behind them. But real life isn't like that. There's no music, just silence. And that silence, it's heavy. I went home to an apartment that felt more like a museum than a place to live. Everything in it held a memory, every photo frame, every coffee mug, every pillow on the couch. I stood in the middle of the living room, turning in slow circles, trying to breathe. And then I sat down, and I didn't move. For hours. No crying, no screaming, just stillness. Like grief had come not as a storm, but as fog. Thick, lingering. I started tossing things out. Not dramatically, not in a fit of rage, just slowly, deliberately. His toothbrush, his hoodie, even the wedding album. Every page I turned was like flipping through the story of someone else's life. I wasn't in those photos anymore, not really. And one night I found a box under the bed I didn't remember storing. Inside were old letters, notes Derek wrote me during our early years. Sweet, handwritten things, promises of forever. Jokes only we understood. I should have thrown them out too, but I didn't. I sat there, reading them, with tears running down my face, not because I missed him, but because I missed who I thought he was. Grief isn't always about the person who left. Sometimes it's about the version of you that died with them. Days turned into weeks, people called. Friends wanted to catch up, to check in. But I couldn't talk. Not yet. There was nothing I wanted to say. Instead, I went for long walks, hours at a time. No destination, just movement. And slowly, the air began to feel lighter. One afternoon, I passed a park where Derek and I used to picnic. I sat on a bench, watched kids play, and remembered how I used to laugh without holding back. That version of me felt so far away, like a stranger. But I didn't turn away from the memory this time. I let it be there. That was the first moment I realized I might survive this. I wouldn't be the same. I didn't want to be. But maybe, just maybe, there was something on the other side of all this pain. And just as I stood to leave the park, my phone buzzed. No caller ID, just a single message. I know what you did. And I'm not done. I froze. Not because I was scared, but because the past has claws. And sometimes it reaches out just when you think you're finally free. I stared at that message for a long time. I know what you did, and I'm not done. It didn't have a name, no number, no emoji, just plain, sharp text, like a blade tucked in a linen napkin. At first, I thought it might be Claire. Maybe she'd finally snapped. Maybe Derek told her the whole story and she wanted revenge. Or maybe it was someone else entirely. But oddly enough, I didn't panic. I just breathed. Because that's what you do when you've already burned down your world. Threats don't scare you anymore. I never replied. I never reported it. I just moved forward. Moving on doesn't look the way people expect. It's not a new haircut or yoga classes or a plane ticket to Bali. Sometimes it's waking up at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, and not feeling your chest cave in. Sometimes it's grocery shopping without crying in the cereal aisle. Sometimes moving on is as small as silence. I started working again, writing, volunteering. Nothing huge, but enough to feel like I was building something of my own again. My therapist told me healing wasn't linear. She was right. Some days I felt fine. Other days I wanted to punch walls. But the trend was upward. And then one evening I did something I hadn't done in months. I laughed. Really laughed. It was stupid. Some video online of a dog trying to play piano. But I laughed so hard I cried. And in that moment, I realized I was still alive. Not just breathing. Alive. I still pass by places filled with ghosts. Restaurants where Derek once held my hand. Stores where Claire would comment on my outfits. And yes, some nights I still have dreams. Vivid ones. Twisted ones. But they don't haunt me anymore. Because I no longer belong to them. And one day I found myself writing something. Not out of anger. Not for revenge. But as a letter. To myself. Dear me, you didn't deserve any of it, but you survived. And that's enough. You are not what they did to you. You are who you chose to become after. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been betrayed, broken, abandoned, know this. You don't have to be the same after. You don't have to be soft. You just have to keep walking. Sometimes life gives you fire. Not to destroy you, but to burn away everything that isn't real. So, let it burn. Let it burn until all that's left is you. Raw. Honest. And finally, free.